Happy Monday, Practice CUNY members. Welcome to this week's Monday message. This week, I want to talk about active listening, and I'm going to provide you with a 6-step daily practice guide to actively listen. If you are a coach or a professionally trained coach, then hopefully you know how to do this, but I'm bringing it to the forefront of your attention as well as the forefront of my own practice, because right now we need to listen. Before I make an all-encompassing I want to clarify and make explicitly clear my stand and my stance on events that are happening in and around at least my part of the world here in the United States. A few weeks ago, a man by the name of George Floyd was blatantly and discriminately murdered for simply existing. I've never brought work of this magnitude to this space. It's scary, and it's right in front of our eyes. I took a vow to do no harm as a coach. I also took a personal committed vow to uphold the empowerment of other people, women, Black women, women of color, LGBT community, trans people, all people. And as I am learning and unlearning through the experiences of the time that we have tipped into, that I am so grateful to have tipped into, is that I am not outside of the system that needs dismantling. I am at the center of the system that needs dismantling because I am a white woman, because I am a white privileged coach in a very privileged space. It is my job not only to call attention to and listen to the voices of those who are speaking, but also to actively decenter myself from the narrative. Because as a white person, I'm always at the center. Messages like this and content of this nature may trigger you. It may make you really uncomfortable, or it may be something that you're grateful to hear come out of this space. But I want you to know that I am actively working as a student to understand and uphold allyship in the best way I can, knowing that it's going to be messy and I'm going to get it wrong. But I'm willing to get it wrong, and I'm willing to wage the mess because people are dying. Because as a life coach, I uphold the tenet to do no harm, to actively create more access to this work, because I believe wholeheartedly in what it is we do as coaches. But I also believe that we are not speaking, and I'll say I am not speaking clearly enough to the spaces that I hold near and dear and value deeply in my heart. It isn't enough to just think these things. We have to activate these things in ourselves and in the communities that we spend the majority of our time in. And so this might be where we part ways, and that's certainly 100% a decision you get to make, and I'm okay with that. But I also want to make vehemently clear that this community is a community that upholds the voices of all people, especially those whose voices aren't typically heard because it's either not safe, not known, or because coaching is a highly whitewashed industry. Not 100%, but enough that it's easy to dismiss or not hear the voices of Black coaches and people of color who are operating in these spaces alongside us. And so wherever you came from into this community, wherever you go to from this community, please make no mistake about where I stand in this work, how I'm going to stand in this work. And one of the ways that I'm going to do that is to listen more. But it isn't enough to just be quiet. Active listening is not silent. It's not passive. It's an active and engaging process that is there to support the people we are listening to, and truly taking to heart that we are not outside of the stories that they share with us. And so this is not only a practice guide for you, this is a practice guide for myself. Because the problem with how most of us listen is we listen to be heard, not to hear. I think it's so easy, and it's been so clearly demonstrated to me in the last few weeks, that we are terrified to hear the thing that we have spent maybe the majority of our life assuming or standing against, and assuming that we're not the thing that maybe we are. And so when you really listen to hear, you may have to do some soul searching. You might have to look fiercely in the mirror and raise your hand and say, I'm not separate from this. I have some work to do. I may have a lifetime of work to do, but I can't do that work if I don't listen first. Here is the definition of active listening out of the International Coach Federation. And I appreciate where this definition is coming from, and I agree with where this definition lands. It is the ability to focus completely on what the client is saying and not saying, to understand the meaning of what is said in the context of the client's desires, and to support client's self-expression. If we take the word client out and read that again, ability to focus completely on what the person is saying and is not saying, to understand the meaning of what is said in the context of this person's desires, and to support this person's self-expression. Active listening is a selfless act. And the moment we bring our fear, our defensiveness, our misunderstanding, our own ignorance into the conversation, we're no longer listening. We are defending, and defense has no place in this space. Few things I want to point out here about this process. Number one is to completely focus on what somebody is and is not saying. We can't just listen to the words, we have to listen to the root. We have to understand the meaning of what is being said. And we have to understand the context in which what is being shared is being shared. We are not objective experiencers of this planet. We are subjective experiencers and creators of this planet. So I urge you this week and all weeks moving forward in your own practices to acknowledge that being brave is not bolstering yourself, but stepping aside. Bravery for me right now looks like actively decentering the white narrative of my own work and my own practice, because I may have, and most certainly have, inadvertently or not, ignored the plights and the necessities and the incredible art and work and advocacy of people outside of the centered space. My being brave right now is to shut up. And as a talker, that's hard to do, but my being brave is to put myself aside, not objectively, but subjectively, to understand that to put myself aside is going to be very uncomfortable. I'm doing the same thing. I'm looking in the mirror and I'm searching my soul and I'm searching my experiences and I'm rewriting the stories I thought I knew about myself within the context of racism, within the context of the narratives that have been sorely missing from my experience and of my life. And in the context as a coach who desires to uplift and empower the choices of all people, I can't assume that I know how all people need to be uplifted and empowered. So there are two tenets to active listening. Number one is that it is a practice. You won't always get it right, and you can't ever be done. Number two, it is not about you. The moment we make it about us, we're no longer listening. And that's where we go back to step one. It's a practice. It's a practice. It's a practice. So number one, when we begin this work, don't listen for your model of the world. Listen for their model of the world. For every person on the planet, there exists a model of the world. There are 7.594 billion people on the planet. Well, then there are 7.594 billion models of the world. And defensiveness is born from the assumption that when another model disrupts or reveals a flaw in my own model, then I must protect my way. But when I choose protecting my way over letting the blind spots be revealed, I am also choosing to deny whomever's model it is in contrast to. Step two, don't listen for a place to insert yourself. When someone asks you to listen, they're not asking for your insertion. They're asking for your silent but active interest in their words, their story, their experience, and their reality. If you can't relate, see step one. See step one. Step three, clarify language when you aren't sure how it's being used. Clarify words and ideas and messaging that you have a different internalized experience of. Notice clarity is not a request to justify someone's positioning. It's truly a curious question. For example, can you share how you are defining blank so I may better understand? Step 4, listen to and listen for. When you listen to, you are listening for the literal language and words being used. When you listen for, you are listening for the meaning, the emotion, the story behind the words. When you can listen for, you're actively listening. We don't often lead with what we really mean. Either we don't know, or it isn't safe, or we aren't ready, or it's scary, or it's exciting or exhilarating. There's so much more to where everything comes from. Get curious about the next step and the next step and the next step. Step 5, appreciate what is happening. Appreciation is a state of mind. Can you truly appreciate the gift of being shared with? Know that when Black folks and people of color share their stories, they are taking a legitimate risk of their physical and emotional safety. Their story is not for your entertainment or your education. Strip away this reply, "Thank you for teaching me," and please replace it with, "Thank you, I appreciate you." Number 6, if you only leave room to be right, you've already made the person you're listening to wrong. If someone is wrong before they've ever begun to share, active listening is not taking place. Recognize your own defenses, your own armoring up of the heart. If I can be of support in any capacity, please know that I am here, but also know that I am here to learn. And if there is any way in which I can do that more clearly or demonstrate that in a way that is useful and supportive to your process, please tell me. This work is only as good as the collective that get to come to it. I thank you for listening if you made it through this entire Monday message. I thank you for actively listening to the spaces that maybe you haven't before. And for those who do not feel that they've been heard, I'm listening now. Have a wonderful week, you guys. Have a happy, happy Monday, and I'll see you here in the community.